Cropper's Nogales Auto Center, your local dealer of Chevy, Buick, and GMC. The best place to find the newest, award-winning Chevy, Buick, and GMC models. But there's more. Cropper's also provides professional certified service, parts, and a full-service body shop and collision center. Come on over and see for yourself everything Cropper's has to offer. Located at 1831 North Grand Avenue, Nogales, Arizona. www.croppercare.com, 520-762-6446. Buenas tardes, Nogalenses. We've got a really great show for you guys tonight. We've got Sheriff Tony Estrada here with us. Before we get started, I want you to go ahead and give us a like and a share. Make sure that everybody you know gets an opportunity to see this video. We always talk about very important stuff that really affects our community, and in reality affects the whole country, because Nogales is such an important, as a port, especially between the United States and Mexico, it's such an important place to the country. Okay, no?
It certainly is a corridor for a lot of good things.
Absolutely.
And sometimes things that are not as good.
Of course. Definitely. So give us a like and a share. Also, you can follow us on all across social media. We are at We Love Nogales. It's @ We Love Nogales. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're everywhere. We have our videos. We have other content that we upload. A lot of great things that we do. Another thing that I really want to touch on before we continue with the monologue is politics versus information. There's a lot of political things happening around the city right now. I mean, it's been thrust into the national spotlight because of the razor wire. And if you follow me on Twitter or on Facebook, you know that I've been very, very vocal about what's happening. But this We Love Nogales is not the platform for me to, or for anybody to discuss that. We will discuss politics, but not to voice opinions. It's to discuss facts and inform the community. And that's what we're here for. If you want to go into more depth, you can follow me on Twitter. You can follow me on Instagram. And that's at Joe Wright Writes, @ Joe Wright Writes. And I upload articles that I've written for other news agencies and all kinds of really, really important stuff about what's happening here in Nogales and how it affects the world and how it affects the country, really. Some really, really great things have been going on. Have you heard, the contest, Sheriff Estrada, the contest that the VFW was putting on?
I know. I heard you talking about it, but no, I wasn't too familiar with it.
So every year, the VFW does this patriotism essay contest, and they select people from the local to submit. And this time, a boy named Daniel Rodriguez, I think he got third place at first, but it was enough to get him into the state, and he got first place in the state. Well, Joe Diaz, former councilman Joe Diaz, was talking to me early today, and he's also the head of the VFW. And he told me that Daniel Rodriguez actually got first place national, which is awesome.
That is awesome. It's quite an accomplishment for somebody from this small community. We have a lot of talent. We have a lot of good students and good kids. Is this a regular student or an adult?
He's a regular student. He goes to Desert Shadows.
Desert Shadows.
Desert Shadows, yeah.
That's quite an impression.
Yeah, and he's gonna win like $5,000 because of this.
He could use it, I'm sure, for his education.
Yeah,
definitely.
College. I mean, if he's apparently a pretty good writer, he should invest it into a writing degree or an English degree.
Congratulations to him and his family.
Congratulations, Daniel Rodriguez. Hopefully, I can get you for an interview sometime soon. That would be great, right? Have him on the show.
It would be great to have some young student come in here and talk about how they see things along the border.
You know, another thing that was really special about what Daniel accomplished is he's the first student from Arizona to ever win this contest at the national level.
Whoa, and a Hispanic at that.
And a Hispanic, Daniel Rodriguez. It's awesome. It's incredible. So something else that happened, we're going to roll over to the city council meeting that happened yesterday real quick. But before we talk about the razor wire, there were some other things that happened, and one of them was the police department presented a proposal for body cameras. You've been aware of this. You've heard about what they're doing.
Definitely. I did have occasion to talk to the chief, and he told me they were embarking in that program.
Yeah, and last night they went over all the numbers, how much it would cost. I think it was $98,000 the first year, and then $56,000 every subsequent year. And they said because we're a special case community, being on the border, it's almost guaranteed that we can secure a grant for this. I know Dr. Varona, I think, was the one who was a little bit concerned about what would happen if the grant didn't come through, because then we'd be stuck with the cost,
Right. It is a concern, and we have already delved into it. The initial is something that we can absorb in the police department. I'm pretty sure can absorb through a grant. It's the storage. Storing those videotapes, whatever it is, and you have to store them, have them available, is where it really costs. So that's what you really have to think about.
And legally, too. I imagine that has to be stored for a number of years before it can be
Definitely.
erased.
It has to be made available, so they can't just use it once and dispose of it.
No.
It has to be available. So the storage part of it is probably the most expensive one.
All right. So that's one of the aspects that's going to have to be considered when the city council does finally make a vote on this.
But it's well worth it. And I hope that the city council goes along with it, because that's technology. That's where we're all going to right now. We cannot avoid that.
No, I mean, every police department across the country is getting it, and it's as much for the safety of the officers as it is for the safety of the public.
Definitely, and obviously it helps a lot in regards to the officer making contact and the public that they make contact with, that they are aware that they're being filmed, and that gives them a little cautionary note. Be careful what you do, be careful what you say. You're on video.
Absolutely, exactly. Another thing, speaking of law enforcement and public safety, not too long ago there was that rollover where the man was flung from the vehicle over I-2 And just today, I was driving to Rio Rico with my son, and traffic was backed up for like a mile. And we couldn't see what it was until we passed, and there was a truck or a vehicle, I couldn't tell if it was a truck or a car, rolled over onto the side. And an ambulance and DPS. And this is, how many have we had in the last few months?
You see them much too often, and it's unfortunate. And obviously, there's a lot of factors that are involved. People that are falling asleep, maybe they had too much to drink, maybe they were distracted, they were on the phone. A lot of things that could be happening that they're not paying attention, and driving is 100% of what you should be doing when you're behind the wheel.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's like I told you right now before we got started. Even sometimes I have my phone next to me, and I think I'm waiting for something important, so I grab it and I pick it up. Y me pego un susto because I'll get too close to the car in front of me. And thank goodness I haven't been in an accident, but that doesn't mean that it can't happen.
No, and I think we go through that a lot. We assume that every call that's coming in is an emergency, it's important, and that we are not paying attention to the caller. We don't want to offend the caller. We want to pick up that phone right away.
Of course.
I mentioned to you earlier that my granddaughter has a perfect method of taking care of that problem. She leaves it in her purse and puts it in the back seat.
That's a great idea. I'm going to have to start carrying a purse just for that.
Now you got to be careful with
that. All right. So, so we just our drivers. Especially if you're driving right now, stop watching. You can watch this later. And if you drive often, we also have a podcast, so you can listen to this on the podcast too while you're driving. You don't have to be watching the screen. But the point is, be safe. Be safe while you're driving.
Definitely, you have to drive. And I'll tell you that I taught defensive driving. There was a program which still exists years back when I was with the police department, I was the first one that gave that instruction in Spanish and English, bilingual. And what it did is it provided somebody that got a citation. If it wasn't a serious citation like reckless driving or DUI, that individual could go to a class. At that time, it used to be about 7 hours.
Oh, wow.
And I used to hold it there at the Americana, and then I think that was the only place I held it, bilingual. And it gave these people that got citations an opportunity to know a little bit about the law, a little bit about defensive driving, what to expect, what to do. One of the things that, and I'll tell you a story, I tell people, you know what, you drive across the line, and across the line you avoid taxi cabs, you avoid dogs, cats, animals, donkeys, or whatever, people. You dodge all of that, all those hazards. You drive defensively across the line because you don't want to have an accident because you're cognizant of all the things you're going to encounter.
Of course.
But as soon as you cross a border, and then all of a sudden you said, hey, I made it, and then you forget about all of those defensive tactics. And this is where you have your accidents.
Of course, of course. You know, I will say, though, that my dad, he wasn't the best driver, but he didn't hardly got in very many accidents on this side. But when I want to say about 8 years old, he got in an accident across the line. And it smashed in the side of my mom's van. And all of us were in the car. And it was the most stressful experience.
Horrifying across the line, believe me, because you're guilty, but
exactly.
I haven't been involved.
And he was a customs officer. So
was he the one that gave the statistics on the crossings by any chance?
No.
That wasn't him. There was somebody with the last name of Wright that used to give all the statistics.
Oh, no, that was him. Yes. That was my dad through the newspaper.
He did?
That was my dad.
Yeah, I remember him.
And sometimes he would have fun with the columns that he wrote. Yeah,
definitely. We enjoyed that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was rest in peace. You know, he passed away in 2010.
I'm sorry to hear that. May he rest in peace.
Yeah. Okay, so another thing. Before I came over here, I was actually at an event earlier today, a really important event, and I'm sure you've heard of this. It's the Ambos Nogales Sisterhood Agreement. You know, that between Nogales, Sonora, and Nogales, Arizona. And it was really cool because, I mean, considering everything that's going on, it was a reaffirmation of the relationship, the bond of Ambos Nogales. We have some pictures of that, and it was just a great event. I mean, all around. If you don't know anything about this, you should ask the city about it. I mean, Mayor Garino was there, Presidente Municipal Jesus Puyol was there, Virginia Stab, the U.S. Consulate General, she was there, and also the Consulado General de Nogales, de Mexico, de aquí de Nogales, he was there. It was a great event, and you know, it was really cool to see.
And I know it's been in existence for quite a few years.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they continue to reinforce it and build bigger, better bonds. I think it's very important that people understand that don't know the border or not familiar with the border. We have great relationships with our friends across the line. We are like one big community. We may have 50,000 people here. That's what I heard was the latest, population statistics here. Maybe 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 people on the Mexican side. So we have learned to coexist perfectly.
Absolutely.
Where you would expect that we would have major problems under these conditions. But we have a long history of cooperation and relationship, which I think is very, very positive.
Absolutely. That's why it's Ambos Nogales. You know, it's
Ambos Nogales. It's why they say Nogales, Nogales, Arizona, Nogales, Sonora. They always associate us with Nogales, Sonora, and vice versa.
Yeah, exactly. For better or worse sometimes, I guess.
Definitely.
And that actually leads me to something else, because it went so well despite what's going on with the razor wire. And last night I was at the city council meeting, and I mean, the tension inside the room at the city council chambers was crazy. I mean, there was press, national press there, video cameras everywhere. Everybody, I mean, there were concerned citizens, politicians, business leaders, all sitting there waiting to hear what the city council was going to say, right? And it started off with a story. You know, Councilman Dr. Varona asked the mayor to tell us something that happened to him earlier that day, and it was that he went to discuss the issue with the Border Patrol. You've heard this, right?
Right.
Yeah, and he was completely dismissed, and it just, I mean, from what he said, it was the concerns of the city were dismissed. they didn't want to talk about it, and he ended up walking out.
Yeah, and that all comes from Washington, you know. And I don't blame the Border Patrol because they're following orders. I mean, if they don't, they're going to be transferred, relocated somewhere else in the Sahara Desert possibly. So they have to, you know, send us a similar message that's coming out of Washington.
Of course.
Even though maybe when you talk to them on the side, they probably don't agree with what's happening. We have great relationships with Border Patrol. We have had that through decades. At the time when I came on board, there were a handful of Border Patrol agents, really no need for them, to the point that we have about 1,000 now.
Yeah.
This has got to be one of the safest border communities along
Absolutely.
the border with Mexico.
I don't want to say that it's one of the most policed regions, but it's one of the most secure regions, we'll say. Because when you say policed, it sounds, it has negative connotation. But it's one of the most in law enforcement, where, I mean, we've got the Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office. We've got the PD. We have Department of Public Safety, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, and currently Department of Defense. You know, with the military.
Definitely, per capita, we have more law enforcement, I think, than anywhere else, and that translates to a safe border community.
Absolutely. So, I mean, we're talking right now the razor wire. Let's transfer to something else that the Border Patrol said. Is they said that one of the reasons why this razor wire was requested because this area, as that specific area that they barbed wire is, there's high traffic of high jumpers, a high amount of jumpers that are rapists and murderers and things like that. As a law enforcement who covers this county, and especially, I mean, the homicide department, all of those violent crimes you guys handle. Do you feel that that's...
I think it's an exaggeration that they do apprehend people with that type of history, obviously. Mm-hmm. But to say that that is the issue and the reason that they have that razor wire is completely out of sense. It just doesn't make any sense. I think that razor wire is the cruelest, most inhumane thing that they could have put on that fence. The fence in itself is only symbolic between the two nations. Yeah. It's existed for decades, obviously, but now it's something more. It's something more. It's uglier, and it's obviously sending a very negative image about this border community that we don't deserve and that we do not have. So I think it's our duty, as people that have lived here, or born, raised here, and been in law enforcement, especially. To send that message that is not the reality of this border here. Now I know that the spokesman for the Border Patrol unit made some comments and criticized local officials and law enforcement that were not for that razor wire. I think he's completely out of touch with the reality, at least here on the border. We're not having an invasion. We're not. This is not a crisis. This is not a national emergency. What we do have is a challenge. We have a challenge on how we're going to deal with illegal immigration. That is a challenge. And for this administration to say that the wall, the fence, is going to stop the drugs and the people, and we will therefore be safe from all of this menace that we're facing, that is very misleading. And it's very unfair that they send that message and those rhetoric throughout America.
You know, two perfect examples is the massive fentanyl bust that just got through the port. It came on a truck, and it came through the port of entry. It wasn't in the desert. It wasn't even in a tunnel. It came on a truck through the port of entry. Also, there was a massive cocaine bust by Coast Guard not too long ago, headed towards Florida, and that was on a boat. A wall wouldn't have stopped that. I mean, and this, I want to stress again, this is not an opinion, this is a fact.
No, we're talking facts here, and we're talking about reality. We're talking about what we've seen and what we currently see right now.
Yep, absolutely.
I mentioned, and you mentioned the tractor trailers. There's been at least three seizures. I think one was in July of last year. The other one was in December, and I think the other one's recent. And they all talked about hundreds of pounds. Years back, I recall that if they were to find at the port of entry ounces of methamphetamine It was scary. It was truly scary.
Wow.
They would even conceal it. They put it on the radiator and then dilute it. That's how they found some of it. And it was scary then. And we
Wow.
were talking about ounces. Now we're talking about hundreds
Yeah,
of pounds.
It was
And-
like the
and
largest fentanyl bust to ever come through
the
through
biggest.
Tennessee.
And I mean, it's nothing to be proud of, but that
No.
just sends an example of the appetite for drugs that we have here. I'm going to get a little political here.
Go ahead.
I have always said that when you compare the drug problem that we have in this nation with the immigration challenge, illegal immigration pales. It pales compared to the drug problem that we have in this nation. We have 5% of the world's population and consume over 50% of the world's drugs. We have 5% of the population in the world, and we incarcerate 25% of the inmates.
Wow.
We have a problem with drug abuse and the appetite for drugs.
Absolutely.
And they don't want to hear this, but I tell them, you know what? As a country, it's unfortunate. We created the cartel. Through that appetite, that huge demand for drugs, the cartels came into business. And I can tell you, going back to 1966, when I became a patrolman to the Nogales Police Department, at what is now a museum.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what kind of place I was working at that time. But we didn't see drugs coming across. Rarely did we encounter anything. It started, I think, about the late 60s. We started seeing a lot of young people coming into community at night, a lot of Anglo-Saxons, most of them out of the county, some out of state, and it would be at night. The community was 8,000 people, one way in and one way out. So we would see these cars come in at night. We had nothing else to do. It was kind of quiet. We'd see them drive up to the fence. We knew what they were up to.
Uh-huh.
The dogs were barking,
And
howling.
well, let's be clear that the fence back then was very much different than the fence we have
Definitely. There were gaps all over the place, and they could just move the drugs through there. So they would go up to the fence, and the dogs would be howling and barking, and then they would come down, and there was only one way in and way out, right in front of the police department. So that's where we'd stop them, and they were bewildered. How did you know that? We never saw anything. We never saw any activity. I said, well, you're not tourists, you're not sightseeing, you're not up in the fence. So we catch them, turn them over to U.S. Customs at that time, and they were happy to have them. One of the things that I noticed, and this is ironic, and I talk to a lot of people about this in the times that I talk about the history and evolution of this border. I tell them, you know what? One thing that stuck to my mind, and I will always remember it, the plates of some of these out-of-state plates. White background, green letters. Colorado. The state of Colorado. I said, isn't it ironic that Colorado was the first one to legalize recreational and marijuana? And I said, well, that sends a strong message. But it was very clear in my mind whenever I saw those white and green plates out of Colorado. They're still still the same. So things have obviously changed. At that time, the majority were young people that would come over and make contact in Mexico, and they pick up a load of marijuana. And then, of course, it grew into an industry where the cartels got involved. And that's what we're facing now. And unfortunately, because of the pressure, things that have been happening with immigration, the cartels are now into human smuggling as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they ventured into both areas as a result of things that we might have contributed to.
So one thing that I'm gonna ask, and I wasn't gonna talk about this because I didn't think about it, but I'm talking about it now, is the recent arrest of El Chapo. Not that recent. He's been apprehended for a while. Chapo Guzman, he's the Sinaloa cartel leader. For those of you who might not know, was arrested and is in custody is he in New York City or Washington D.C.?
I think he's in New York.
New York City, and that's where the trial is taking place. Do you feel like that's affected Nogales in any way, or at least the cartels that move things through Nogales?
I don't believe so. I think the seizures are still up, and I also would surmise that there's a lot of drugs that are still making it through. There's no question about it. With hundreds of tractor trailers coming across every day, and them inspectors or the officers up there having the ability or technology to just check so many of them, there's that opportunity. Santa Cruz County is a corridor. It's a major corridor, like you mentioned before. for international commerce, tourism, relationships on both
Absolutely.
sides of the border, the commerce coming from across, the consumer coming from across the line. But by the same token, because it is a major corridor, and you have a major highway in Sonora that connects with the major highways here in Arizona, you have that attractive and opportunity for these cartels to move people and drugs across this border. So,
Of course.
but it's done in a subtle way. I keep telling people, because the rhetorics are, they must be looking at the border, people just scrambling through like crazy.
Oh, I know,
With
right?
drugs on their back and out of control, and the law enforcement here is dodging bullets, and that
Yeah, they
is
think
not,
it's the Wild West. People
it
have
is-
this perception that this is the Wild West.
it is crazy. It is
Yeah.
definitely crazy. I'll tell you one thing that happened years back. There were some detectives that came. I won't mention where they were from another country, and they were coming to pick up a homicide suspect that was picked up at the
wow.
border.
Okay.
As I met them there at our office, and introduced myself, I said, why don't we go? This is the first time you've been along the border. Yeah. Why don't I show you up there? I said, no. They were afraid.
Wow.
They were afraid. That is what you hear from people. The further you get from the border, the more they believe
Yeah.
that these terrible things are happening.
Absolutely. I mean, they believe that there's a crisis.
There is. That's what they believe, and I can tell people that there is no crisis.
There's not. So maybe we've spent a little bit too much time on this subject. I'm gonna just wrap up real quick, and then we're gonna take a break. So the mayor and city council, after the mayor told his story about what happened with the border patrol, made the decision to condemn the razor wire and demand its removal. Since then, Homeland Security has sent a response. We have a picture of that. Edgardo, if you want to put that picture up real quick. That picture can also be found, I believe it is on Homeland Security's website, and also I believe on their Twitter account. It's also, if you want to follow more coverage of this, and my personal coverage, in fact, I wrote a piece for Latino Rebels. That was actually a very personal piece. It was far beyond just news reporting. It wasn't very journalistic at all, actually, because I was very emotional when I wrote it. And I sent it to Latino Rebels, and they posted it, and it was about my personal experience as somebody growing up here. And we talked about my dad. We mentioned my dad working in Customs and Border Protection, and how not just growing up here provided an insight that people outside don't have. But then growing up in the home of a law enforcement and the Customs and Border Protection furthered that insight even more. And I put that in the article, and I submitted to Latino Rebels, and they posted it, and it's gotten a major response, which is great. It feels good, for me. But because I think the reason people responded so well is because it's somebody who's actually from here, as opposed to somebody from outside. Yeah.
You're telling something from actual experience. You lived it. Just like when I talk to people, I'm not bringing something up that somebody's telling me.
Exactly.
I have actually experienced it. I've been part of it for the last, I was a year and a half when I immigrated,
Yep.
humble beginnings across the line. And I've had the honor, the pleasure, and distinction of having been a sheriff for going on 27 years. Currently the only Hispanic sheriff in the whole state of Arizona. Probably among the only Democrats as well.
Yeah, probably.
But for sure,
It's definitely a red state.
yeah, but for sure one of the oldest ones. So there's nobody, and I don't want to, send the wrong message or anything else, but I don't think there's anybody else here in law enforcement that has had the experience that I have had, the continuous experience of 50 years of law enforcement along the border, and haven't seen that, change, evolve, and everything else.
Now you're just campaigning. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
So, I've been lucky 7 times around.
Mhm.
I never expected, and I have had the opportunity from humble beginnings to see people, important people, congressmen, representative, people that were running for president, governors. I've met a lot of important people that I never in my life would have imagined that I would be in a position to have done that. It's humbled me even more.
Absolutely. So we are going to take a break. If you do want to follow my coverage of the current border crisis, you can go to latinorebels.com and search Joseph Paul Wright or search Nogales, and all of my articles will come up. You can go to the Latino Rebels Twitter page, their Facebook page, or their Instagram, and everything that I've been doing is being covered by them, and being published by them. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we get back, we're going to move on past immigration and stuff like that, and we're going to start talking about some of the incredible things that the sheriff's office has going on. All right.
Appreciate it. We'll get away from politics for a little while.
We'll get away.
Politics will not get away from us.
Yeah, exactly. That's the hard. That's the part that sucks the worst, you know. But so we're gonna take a break and we'll be back. Oh. Cropper's Nogales Auto Center, your local dealer of Chevy, Buick, and GMC. The best place to find the newest, award-winning Chevy, Buick, and GMC models. But there's more. Cropper's also provides professional certified service, parts, and a full-service body shop and collision center. Come on over and see for yourself everything Cropper's has to offer. Located at 1831 North Grand Avenue, Nogales, Arizona. www.croppercare.com, 520-762-6446. Welcome back to our show. It's me, Joe Wright, el gringo más mexicano, con el sheriff más mexicano. Sí, claro que sí, el único mexicano aquí en Arizona. En todo el estado de Arizona. And one of the longest running sheriffs, for sure.
Currently, in the state, I'm the longest serving sheriff. In Santa Cruz County, the longest serving sheriff was a gentleman by the name of J.J. Lowe. He served 5 administrations.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm on my 7th. When I won the first one, I thought myself was incredibly lucky.
Yeah.
Then I won the second one, and then I won the third one, just like Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And then I won the fourth and the fifth, and I said, "Who is Michael Jordan?" You know.
It's like keep them coming, keep them coming.
But that's it. 7 times around, so my lucky number, so I don't want to push it.
Well, in 2 more years, the election comes up again.
Yeah, 2020, and like I said, it's very possible. Very possible. I can't change my mind, so I don't give anything definite until I talk to family and my team there at the sheriff's office. Whether I will run again, it's not very likely, but who knows?
Now, is there? I've heard of some people considering running against you. Joe Agostini. I've heard that he's going to throw his hat in the ring, but I haven't heard anything official from anybody.
Oh well, there's quite a few people, and they told me once, Sheriff, when you don't run, they're going to come out of the woodwork.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Because they'll see that there's an opportunity. So I'm just hoping that if that happens, maybe one of my officers will be there, because I got officers been there 20, 30 years. If not, let's hope we get a good sheriff that'll continue the tradition that we have had here for years.
Absolutely, very, very good. That's what we hope for. Somebody who's going to continue a tradition of public safety, public involvement. I mean, community involvement, which is something the sheriff's office has been well known for a long time. I mean, I remember the DARE program since I was, in middle school. And you guys still have the DARE program now?
It's still there in the school resource officer program as well. That's been in since 1994.
Yeah, I still remember my resource officer from when I was in high school.
What was his name?
Peña.
Oscar
Peña. Yeah.
Whoa, he's one of my sergeants in the CID, Criminal Investigation Division.
Yep.
Real nice officer, real good professional.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He actually he lives down the hill from where my mom lives. Yeah. So every now and then I'll run into him too. Yeah, he's a great guy, and I still remember him from when I was in school.
We're very proud of him.
Absolutely. And that's one of the many programs that you still have going on. And one of the things that I liked about that program is, at least in Peña's case, he was very, very interactive with the students. And it built up this trust.
They create a bond.
Yeah,
and I remember having been interviewed by Channel 11 at that time when they had the channel down here. With and I'm trying to remember who the host was. The first time that I was on TV with regards to the DARE program, and Oscar Rosas, who retired from the Nogales Police Department, now working for the state up at the port. Yeah. He was the first DARE officer that we had in the city of Nogales.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
And that was in the late 80s. I think the sheriff's office was the first one to start it. Then we jumped into it shortly after that.
Very cool. So another thing, we were talking about the different programs that you guys have going on. You've got DARE, which is a great program. The resource officer program, law enforcement assistant team, you mentioned that.
Definitely. We have a group of about a dozen volunteers, civilians, and I think we have about a female or two that we have prepared, trained, even in firearms, law, everything that they would need to be able to understand the role of a regular peace officer. They don't have peace officer authority. They're volunteers. They assist in a lot of things, but they are provided with a vehicle, a weapon, armor, everything that they possibly need. And they're like our ambassadors out there. They go out there and they help on a lot of these events that we don't have the staffing. We're spread thin. We don't have as many people as we should have.
Yeah.
And they're very helpful. They're very helpful. Whenever we need anything, they're there. They help us tremendously. So that's one great program that we have.
And that's part of your volunteer program too?
That is a volunteer program that we have there.
Very cool. Now, another thing that we were just talking about, because it's actually something that's happening right now, is search and rescue.
Yeah, search and rescue right now. Obviously, we're just going through an event of an 82-year-old man out of Ohio who had a resident or staying in Tucson, had gone up to Madera Canyon a couple of days ago. Got lost, used a cell phone, called 911. It hit the tower up in Tucson and went to Pubic County Sheriff's Office. Then they related to us, claimed he was lost. Immediately, we activated our search and rescue team. Our coordinator is one of our officers. Went up to the location and tried to locate the individual. It was a search and rescue operation at that time. I got cold overnight, obviously. They kept on going till around 2 o'clock in the morning. Finally gave up, continued the following morning, in hopes that they could find this individual. And unfortunately, they called it off today. And it is no longer search and rescue. It's now a recovery. They will be meeting tomorrow on a command center up in Tucson and trying to feel the area, spread the area out, some of the volunteers, in hopes that we can have better luck.
Well, I hope. I mean, it's recovery now, but I guess you can always hold out a little bit of hope that maybe.
We tried as much as we possibly could, but the inclement weather obviously provided quite a challenge to everybody, especially for this individual. We don't know if he was prepared for it. Maybe he was planning to go back. Something must have happened. His car was located there in the visitor's parking lot, so we knew he was up there somewhere. We tried to track him to GPS. We were able to get in a general area, but We were not able to locate them. So we're returning tomorrow, and hopefully, but that's one of the services that our volunteers provide. And these are people that work and live with us here, that give up their time. And they're out there in the cold at night at all kinds of times, and they don't get paid. But the reward is finding somebody and helping somebody out.
Of course. Now, one of the other things that I want to talk about is it's actually really cool because I had a chance to see this in action at a emergency response activity several years ago. I want to say probably 2012, maybe.
Yeah, probably right after 9/11.
Yeah. Well, it was in 2012 that there was this county-wide. Actually, it was kind of a statewide emergency crisis thing, and it happened over by the stables in Rio Rico. I don't know if you remember this. In the
yes, we do. Yeah, I think we participated.
Yeah, you did. The SWAT team actually did some drills there, and I got to watch these drills because I was a journalist at that time for another media organization, and I was reporting on this event, and I got to see the SWAT in action, and it was really cool to see.
They're well prepared. They get a lot of training. Especially with firearms, rifles, maneuvers, tactical ways to deal with certain things, continuously exposed to being in good physical condition, good mental condition. We're very selective of who we choose to be part of that, and they go to annual trainings as well, besides the trainings that they get here locally. So it's a well-trained group, and we have one for patrol. And because we have a jail, that's what I call a gated community that I have. We also have a SWAT team in the detention area. So we try to be prepared there, and we try to be prepared out in the public.
Of course. And I mean, I imagine, I don't know if you guys have ever had a reason to use your SWAT team inside the detention center.
We not necessarily at the detention center, because I think one of the advantages that we have that we didn't have at the old center, we have a lot of security. We were able to now, we have minimum, medium, and maximum security. So we're able to classify people, and that prevents us from having riots or situations. And if we do have somebody that's in minimum and he gets rowdy, we put him somewhere else. Okay. So we're able to address those things a lot more effectively than we would before, but we still have that team that can go in there at any given time and control any situation, avoid any type of riot. We haven't had that.
I remember I actually had an opportunity to walk through the jail, not as a prisoner, and take a tour of the whole thing and the security. I mean, it's pretty state of the art,
Yeah, definitely, when that was designed and we were contemplating that jail back in 2005, one of the things that the architects told us, Sheriff, don't build an old new jail. Forget about the facility you had and how you handled it. You have to build a new modern jail. And that's precisely what we did.
Very cool. Now, one of the ones, we just talked about detention. 911 center is also right there in that same building, right?
Yeah, we have everything in that building. It's all combined. We moved into that building in April of 2011. Started building in 2006. We had that proposition that was on the ballot in 2005. And we were so lucky.
That was actually one of the first things that my first times voting was for that proposition. Yeah. I
appreciate that. I'll tell you that sheriffs that I talked to at that time say, you know what, you were very lucky, because that doesn't normally happen the first time around. People don't want to pay taxes.
Yeah.
So we were very fortunate in a lot of ways. We went out, we promoted it in the community. We had the judges, we had the courts, we had a lot of people helping out. Chamber of Commerce helped. Marcelino Barona helped getting a presentation to the Chamber of Commerce at the American.
Oh, Marcy's in everything. Yeah, Marcy does everything.
And I spoke and everything else. And we sold it. We sold it because it was a good program. And in 2005, it was approved. In November, I believe, 2006 is when it was implemented. And it's a 25-year debt that we have.
Okay.
So we've been paying it since 2006, actually. So we've got a ways to go.
Till 2031, huh?
Yeah, and
well, you're just gonna have to keep running for sheriff until then.
It's been a remarkable journey with that jail, and made it a lot more safer for the inmates, for our correctional officers, for the attorneys, and everybody goes in there. We have video video initial appearances, video visitation. We have our own kitchen. So many things that we provide. We have happy campers in there, because we treat them well. They don't want to be there, but since they're there,
but you treat them well. You might as well. I mean, if they're going to be there, you got to treat them right.
Treat them humanely. So we do a lot of that. So we're very fortunate in having had that jail. One of the other things that I've been honored by is that at the end, few years back, they named that particular building after me. It was quite an honor. That it was humbling at the beginning. They asked at the beginning, what should we name this building? They were throwing things around in the board meeting. I told them, you know what, why don't you just put the Santa Cruz County, Sheriff's Office or Detention Center? And somebody came up with the idea, why don't we call it the Tony Estrada? And when they said that, I said, well, I got two ways to look at it. We can put Tony Estrada Law Enforcement Center, which what I wanted, or some other law enforcement public safety center. I didn't like that. I like the more traditional one. So
of course
we went with that. So that's been quite an honor.
Cool. I want to stop real quick and let you know that John Kissinger, the deputy city manager, he actually just commented, said, "Great job, Sheriff Tony."
John, he started when I was, I believe him, a captain at that time, and I recall very clearly that he said, when we would ask people in interviews when they hire, what are your short-term goals? Well, a lot of them say, well, I want a job. Okay, what are your long-term goals? Well, I want to be a sergeant. I want to be this and that. I don't remember if John said it during that interview that we were holding, but I knew he did say it at some point. He said, I want to be a captain. I want to be a captain like you.
Wow.
And not only did he accomplish that, he became the chief of police.
Yep.
He became chief of police and now assistant city manager. So John has made tremendous progress. He's very familiar with the community.
Absolutely.
He's very familiar with the law enforcement community. And he's been a great asset to the city of Nogales. And we're all very proud of him. We're very proud of him of how he rose on the ranks and how he's still there.
Getting back to the razor wire for a moment, a story that John Kissinger told me last night was he actually treated somebody when he was an officer. Well, he didn't treat somebody. He responded to somebody who had their arm cut on razor wire. And he said it was one of the most disturbing things he'd ever seen.
It has to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that you don't expect to find. And obviously it's something that's illegal. It's illegal to use razor wire.
Absolutely.
The building codes will not allow you. Building codes will allow you to build a wall maybe 6 feet, that people can climb over out of an emergency. And no razor wire and nothing else. I used to see some place across the line, especially, put a wall and they shatter, break glass.
Yeah.
So people
couldn't climb over. Definitely don't want to do that. Definitely don't nobody get any ideas.
That was inhumane. So, this was really something when we saw that razor wire there. When we saw the first strand up there, I said, well, that's terrible. That's bad. But then when we saw 4 or 5 more strands of
that's bad.
I said, that's over the top.
Way over the top. All right, so we're gonna wrap up pretty quick, but let's talk about some of your other community involvement and your patrols that you have going around. How many deputies do you have on patrol at any given time?
Well, on patrol we're limited. Like I said, we're stretched very thin. And just to give you an idea, the Bureau of Statistics said that for every 1,000 residents at 2.5, which is the high end, we should have over 60 deputies. We have 38, including myself. At the low end, at the very, very low end of 1.5, we should have 41.
Oh, wow.
We're even below the recommendation. So as a vibrant, robust, active voter community and corridor, that is unacceptable.
Yeah, well, and that's where one of the controversies that came out recently was about overtime, right? Was because a staffing issue.
Yeah, it had to do with staffing, but more on this particular issue, it had to do with assigning people that would be responsible in the absence of a supervisor, somebody that we found prepared with the experience to take over and make major decisions when we didn't have a supervisor. It's a liability issue more than anything else.
Yeah.
And I think if any were the thing that happened and we had not done something like that, we would have a liability. And then we say, Sheriff, why didn't you take care of that? So I'm trying to take care of that. I'm trying to keep the county out of liability and the sheriff's department out of liability. So that's what we're kind of going through. I'm very optimistic that that will be resolved because it was done with the best of intentions and in an effort to provide the best public safety that we possibly can.
Of course, absolutely. Now, any other community involvement that you guys do that you can think of and mention right now?
We try to get involved in just about everything that we possibly can. Our officers are now involved in certain with certain agencies and on certain programs, whether it deals with victims, whether it deals with child abuse. My detectives are very involved in anything that may be impacting the residents in the county. I have been very active, and I think that has been very helpful for my career. I have been a spokesperson for United Way for over 3 decades. We started with a shelter for battered women, domestic violence, and it's still a major issue. But being involved in the community, having your finger to the pulse of the community, is very helpful because I think you have to do that, and the community has to embrace you and acknowledge you, accept you, and support you.
Absolutely, very, very important. And and that's one thing that I feel you've been. My own observations, especially since adulthood. I mean, even in my adolescence, is that the community has always felt that you are a part of it. It's not something that's just,
Being born and raised here, it's in my heart, and I will always do the very best that I can, recognizing the needs and the challenges that we have, to have my officers do the very best that they can. And let me tell you that we have a selection process that's excellent. How we try to get some of these recruits, the backgrounds we do on it. We do written, oral, we do interviews, we do psychological, lie detector. We check for just the background, everything we possibly can. And I'll tell you that the majority of the ones that we have are local talent, bilingual, bicultural. People know them, people are familiar. They're familiar with the issues, the language, the culture. That has a lot to do with being successful.
Of course. My last question before we go is, so what's the best areas for me to drive in to avoid deputies?
I would say get on the highway.
Get on the highway?
Because
but then highway patrol will get me.
That's the highway patrol, yeah. We're on the rural roads. That's where we want to be.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for stopping by and talking with us. We've had some great conversation here.
We have, and I think there's still a lot we need to. But I want to thank you for the opportunity to allow me to express some of the things that I think are important.
No, well, we're going to have you back.
We will be. Thank you.
We're going to have to come back. We're going to have, because there's a lot more to talk about.
A lot more.
Absolutely.
This community, the border community, has a long history of good, positive things.
It is, and it does. And, one thing that I was just thinking about that I want to ask you about, if we had the time, is, over the decades, that you've served in law enforcement, you've served this community, you've seen the changes, that have changed, not just law enforcement changes, but the changes in the community. So I think we're going to have to do a special episode where we just talk about that.
I like to talk about growing up in Nogales, and I think people may appreciate what we went through, what we saw. Just to give you a prime example, when I was growing up, there were, I think, 3 or 4 theaters. The Nogales, the Roxy, the Star, and then the Rancho Grande.
Uh-huh.
There was an A&W.
Wow.
There was a roller rink. All of the things that you would expect to have now, we had them back then. It was such a healthy thing. No cell phones, no cameras, no telephones, nothing
like that. Nothing to distraction. No distractions.
Just out there playing and being healthy and enjoying each other. I'd like to bring some of those memories back. One
thing that I do want to mention is, when I was younger, before I had a cell phone, I was much thinner. Yeah. So we do got to go. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank you again for coming out. Please, again, give this video a like and a share. Even though if anybody wasn't able to watch it live, it stays on Facebook. It will go on YouTube for anybody to watch, and it will also be uploaded as a podcast for anybody to listen to. So to drive safe, listen to the podcast.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say though is in closing, I hope they didn't find me too controversial.
No, well, I don't think what isn't controversial right now? You know what I mean? Just about everything you can say is controversial.
About the reality.
Yep, exactly. So thank you guys for coming. Again, you can follow me at @JoeWrightWrites, and that's on Twitter and Instagram. And you more than likely already have me on Facebook, which is just Joe Wright. So we'll see you guys. Actually, tomorrow we have a We Love Nogales exclusive with Mayor Arturo Garino. We're going to be in his office, and we are going to be talking about the same controversial subject that we started with today, which is the razor wire. And we're going to be getting his point of view on it. We're going to try to do our best to avoid political opinions, but if you really want to hear straight from the mayor's, from the mayor, how he feels about it and why he made the decision to condemn and demand the removal of the razor wire, then check in with us tomorrow. It's going to be intense for sure, at the very least.
It's a hot topic, believe me. Right now, it is a very sensitive topic at this point for all of us down here.
Of course. All right. So thank you for watching, and tune in tomorrow. We'll see you guys. We'll see you guys tomorrow at 4 p.m. Cropper's Nogales Auto Center, your local dealer of Chevy, Buick, and GMC. The best place to find the newest, award-winning Chevy, Buick, and GMC models. But there's more. Cropper's also provides professional certified service, parts, and a full-service body shop and collision center. Come on over and see for yourself everything Cropper's has to offer. Located at 1831 North Grand Avenue, Nogales, Arizona. www.croppercare.com, 520-762-6446.